Welcome to the Tigers Men's Lacrosse Report. I'm your host, Spiro Maricas, along with the head coach of the Tigers, Sean Adlin. Well, Coach, let's start off with, first off, last week I asked you if you thought Mikey Weissauer was adjusting well from midfield to the attack, because he scored 6 goals last week, was a National Player of the Year. Well, apparently he's not adjusting that well because he only scored 5 goals this week against Stony Brook, including the game winner, but what a performance again from the junior.
We're working with him on that. You know, he's got, 6 goals got to be the minimum, right? You got to keep that up. But yeah, it's, I think, again, our offense is starting to understand, right? It's been a work in progress with just different personnel in different places and injuries and whatnot. So, as you know, you've seen enough lacrosse and games throughout your career. It's, the season, plays out in different ways. And with us, with different pieces in place offensively, I feel like we have a better understanding of who we are, what works well for us, and Mikey's, finding a good role within that.
All right, 2 weeks in a row, first 2 conference games, and you win both of them in overtime. I know at the end of the game, your former associate head coach and your assistant for the under-20 team, Anthony Gallardi of Stony Brook, had to be sick to his stomach because he's just lost 2 games in a row in the conference in overtime. You guys gave each other a big hug at the end of the game, but I'm sure for you had to feel for the guy.
You do. It's right. I know who he is. I know how much he puts into it. I know how prepared his teams are and how good they are. Obviously, we're fortunate and excited that we won, but, been in his shoes before, and it's not fun, just trying to find the answers. And again, that overtime games can, it's very easy for it to go, the other way. And where our guys, stayed disciplined and loose enough and made the plays to make it happen. But for him, it's, I know they're continuing to work it out, and they got the pieces in place, and they got the right guys, and, they're going to find a way.
For you in this game, a big change came late when you went to your 3rd face-off man. What was behind that, and how excited was the team about his performance?
Yeah, we went to Miles Quant, who fortunately just got cleared from his injury from last season, the week leading into Stony Brook. So to have him available was exciting, just to have another face-off guy in the mix. Miles had been taking, a ton of reps, within our face-off guys throughout the spring, getting himself back into the mix. And I felt like Matt was struggling. He was battling and close to making some plays, but just not finishing them. I thought Kai did a good job of changing it up, and he, I thought, was looking better than Matt, but he was just missing the ball at times and not being able to come up with it. And our wing play wasn't great, so, Miles had been working his butt off. He deserved an opportunity. We needed, maybe a little bit of a different look, and he went out there and gave it.
Well, it certainly worked out well because he won the faceoff that led to the winning goal in overtime, and the Tigers now 2-0 in the CAA. When you look on the defensive side, still room for improvement there.
Absolutely. Just like we talked about with the offense, still figuring out who's doing what, how we need to adjust to who we are and what works well for us. Sam Morin, did a really good job. We were talking about the face-off guys. He was a big part of our success later in the game, making some big plays with ground balls.
The ground ball machine on Saturday.
Yeah, huge. Which obviously, helped us, with those possessions. So, again, trying to get our seniors, Spags and Joe Petro and Sam and Ray Glass and stuff to really, keep the guys moving in the right direction, not try to overthink it, which I think sometimes we get caught doing that defensively. Play loose and confident and understand what we're trying to do, but not try to do too much.
All right, well, this week you will venture on the road in the CAA for the first time. You'll head up to Drexel. Your Hopkins brother, Brian Volker, been there a long time, retired at the end of last season. So what do? They take an assistant, lift him up to head coach, another Hopkins guy, Steve Boyle. So they're off to a start where they lost last week to Fairfield, who is the only undefeated team left in the country. And they were beating the Stags for most of the game, but Fairfield came back late to win that game, so a disappointing loss for Drexel. But Max Sample back again. Seems like he's been there about 8 years for the Dragons. He's got 20 goals already.
Yeah, Drexel's a very, very dangerous team. They really had a good hold on that Fairfield game at Fairfield against, as you talked about, Fairfield being an extremely strong team right now. But Fairfield did a good job just kind of turning the tide, later in the game in that fourth quarter, and then, made some quick plays back to back, and then put Drexel a little bit more on their heels and squeaked out a win. But Drexel showed really what they're capable of. And Max Semple's a big piece to that. Again, he's a guy that's been a huge piece of their offense and their team ever since he's been there. So there's him as well as many other pieces in that offense you got to worry about.
Yeah, they're a team that they're able to put up goals. They're averaging 12 goals a game. So your defense is going to be tested again this week.
Yeah, right, we've been playing Drexel for forever in the CAA, and they've always been a strong offensive team, always been able to put double-digit goals on the board. So, I'm looking forward to our defense being able to really play the way that we're capable of playing, understanding that Drexel is going to challenge us in quite a few different ways. You can't just focus on a guy here or a guy there. They run out a ton of middies. They got guys at the attack that can really challenge you and hurt you. So, and different sets. So they're not a vanilla offense. They're an offense that can be very dynamic. So we got to be ready for it.
And be nice to have a multiple goal lead with about 10 seconds left, wouldn't it? Yeah.
It'd be nice.
So the Tigers will take on the Dragons on Saturday at high noon. Glenn Smith and I will have it for you on TowsonTigers.com. So for the head coach of the Tigers, Sean Nadlin, I'm Spiro Marikas. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Tiger Men's Lacrosse Report.